You will be betrayed, not by strangers, not by enemies, by the people you trusted most, the ones who sat at your table and smiled while sharpening the blade behind their back. And when it happens, everything you believed about loyalty, about love, about the world itself, collapses in a single breath. Most people never recover from this moment. They harden, they withdraw. They spend the rest of their lives flinching at every handshake, scanning every face for the next betrayal. But there is another way. 5 centuries ago, a man was imprisoned, tortured, and exiled by the very people he had served faithfully for 14 years. His name was Niccolo Machiavelli. And instead of breaking, he wrote the most dangerous book on power ever created. What he discovered about betrayal did not just save him. It has shaped the thinking of every serious leader since. This is what strong people do when everyone turns against them. There is a specific kind of pain that only betrayal produces. It is not the pain of loss. It is not grief. It is something sharper and more disorienting, because it destroys your map of reality itself. When a stranger harms you, you adjust your guard. When an enemy strikes, you expect it. But when the person you trusted, the friend, the partner, the colleague, the family member, turns on you, the wound goes deeper than the act itself. It strikes at your judgment. It makes you question not just them, but yourself. How did I not see this coming? That question is the real poison, not the betrayal, the doubt. Machiavelli understood this intimately. In 1512, after serving as a senior diplomat for the Florentine Republic, the Medici family returned to power and dismantled everything he had built. His allies vanished. Men who had praised him in public denounced him in private. He was arrested, accused of conspiracy, and subjected to the strappado, a form of torture where the body is suspended by the wrists, tied behind the back. He had done nothing wrong. His only crime was loyalty to the wrong side at the wrong moment. And yet, when he emerged, broken in body but not in mind, he did not seek revenge. He did not collapse into bitterness. He sat down at a wooden desk in a farmhouse outside Florence and began writing. What poured out of him was not anger. It was clarity. Here is what most people never understand about betrayal. It does not come from nowhere. It follows patterns as predictable as weather, if you know where to look. Machiavelli's central insight, the one that made the prince so dangerous, was deceptively simple. People do not betray you because they are evil. They betray you because their interests shifted, and you failed to notice. This is the root cause that separates those who are destroyed by betrayal from those who are forged by it. The ones who break are the ones who believed loyalty was permanent. The ones who survive are the ones who understood that loyalty is conditional, always, in every relationship, without exception. This is not cynicism. This is structural honesty about how human beings actually work. Machiavelli wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, simulators and deceivers, avoiders of danger, greedy for gain. He was not describing monsters. He was describing ordinary people under pressure. People who will stand beside you when it costs them nothing, and disappear the moment standing beside you carries a price. The pain of betrayal is not that someone chose themselves over you. The pain is that you believed they never would. And that belief, that beautiful, dangerous belief, is what made you vulnerable, not your kindness, not your trust, your refusal to see that every alliance has a price and every loyalty has a limit. Strong people do not stop trusting after betrayal. They stop trusting blindly. And that distinction changes everything. Before we go deeper into the 7 things strong people actually do when everyone turns against them, I want to ask you something. Think about the betrayal that shaped you most, the one that still sits in your chest when you think about it late at night. Here is my question, and I want you to write it in the comments below. When that betrayal happened, what did you lose first? Your trust in them or your trust in yourself? Be honest. There is no wrong answer here, because naming which one broke first is the beginning of understanding why the wound has lasted as long as it has. Most people never separate those 2 losses. They blur together into one wall of pain. But they are different injuries, and they heal differently. Write your answer below. You do not need to explain the full story. Just name it. And if this is the kind of thinking that pulls something loose inside you, subscribe. What comes next goes much deeper into how Machiavelli's framework actually rebuilds what betrayal destroyed. Now let us look at how betrayal actually shows up in your life. Not in theory, but in the patterns you recognize in your own body and your own choices. The first pattern is this. You already knew. Before the betrayal landed, something in you was already uneasy. You noticed the conversation that felt slightly off, the compliment that carried a strange weight, the moment when their eyes did not match their words. You registered it, and then you talked yourself out of it. You told yourself you were overthinking, being paranoid, being unfair. That voice, the one that tried to warn you, was not paranoia. It was pattern recognition. And you silenced it because you wanted the relationship to be what you had decided it was, not what it actually was. The second pattern is overinvestment. You gave more than the relationship warranted, not because they earned it, but because giving made you feel safe. You confused generosity with insurance. You believed somewhere deep and unspoken that if you gave enough, they could never leave. If you sacrificed enough, they would have to stay loyal. But Machiavelli saw through this logic centuries ago. He observed that excessive generosity does not create loyalty. It creates entitlement. The more you give without requiring reciprocity, the less your contributions are valued, until the person receiving them believes they are owed, not gifted. You were not betrayed because you were too generous. You were betrayed because your generosity removed the cost of disloyalty. The third pattern cuts deeper still. You tried to make yourself necessary instead of making yourself respected. There is a difference. Necessity is functional. Respect is relational. You can need someone and still discard them the moment a better option appears. But you rarely betray someone you genuinely respect, because respect carries a weight that utility does not. You made yourself the one who always answered the call, the one who fixed things, the one who held everything together. And you mistook their dependence for devotion. When they no longer needed what you provided, the relationship evaporated, and you stood there wondering what went wrong. What went wrong is that you built the bond on function, not on mutual regard. And function is replaceable. It always is. The fourth pattern is the cruelest and the most common. After the betrayal, you turned the blade inward. You did not just grieve the loss of the relationship. You began prosecuting yourself for having trusted at all. You replayed every moment, searching for the mistake you made, the sign you missed, the flaw in your character that invited this. And the verdict you reached silently in the courtroom of your own mind was that you deserved it, that something in you was defective, that this was proof you could not trust your own judgment. This is the deepest wound of betrayal, not what they did, what you decided it meant about you. And it is a lie, a convincing lie, but a lie nonetheless. Now we arrive at the core of what Machiavelli actually taught. Not the caricature of cold manipulation, but the real framework buried inside his work. A system for navigating a world where betrayal is not an exception, but a structural feature of human relationships. The first thing strong people do is separate the person from the lesson. Machiavelli did not waste his exile cursing the Medici. He studied them. He analyzed their methods, their timing, their leverage, not out of admiration, but out of a ruthless commitment to understanding. He asked not, how could they, but how did they? And what does that teach me about the structure of power itself? When you are betrayed, the temptation is to make it personal, to fixate on the individual. But strong people extract the principle. They ask, what did this reveal about the architecture of this kind of relationship? What was the structural weakness I built into this bond? That question is not self-blame. It is engineering. The second thing strong people do is grieve fully, without treating grief as weakness. Machiavelli's letters from exile are soaked in loneliness. He missed Florence. He missed relevance. He missed the feeling of mattering. He did not pretend otherwise, but he also did not let that grief become his identity. There is a critical difference between feeling pain and becoming pain. Strong people feel the full weight of betrayal. They sit with the anger, the confusion, the sorrow. But they do not build a home there. They pass through it the way a traveler passes through a storm, drenched, shaken, but still moving. You are allowed to hurt. You are not allowed to stop. The third thing strong people do is rebuild, but selectively. After betrayal, the instinct is to either trust no one or to immediately fill the void with new connections. Both are traps. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the difference between allies of convenience and allies of conviction. Allies of convenience join you when the cost is low and leave when the cost rises. Allies of conviction remain because they share your values, not your resources. After betrayal, strong people audit their circle with ruthless honesty. They stop asking, who likes me? And start asking, who has stayed when staying was expensive? That question alone will reduce your circle dramatically. And that reduction is not a loss. It is a purification. The fourth thing strong people do is refuse to seek revenge. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive of Machiavelli's insights. The man who wrote the manual on political ruthlessness also understood that revenge is almost always a losing strategy. Revenge keeps you tethered to the person who hurt you. It forces you to think about them, plan around them, organize your energy toward them. Every moment spent on revenge is a moment stolen from your own reconstruction. Machiavelli did not destroy the Medici. He outlasted them intellectually. His ideas survived their dynasty by centuries. That is the deepest form of victory, becoming so consequential that the betrayer becomes a footnote in your story. The fifth thing strong people do is let their silence speak. When everyone betrays you, the world watches to see how you respond. They expect rage. They expect collapse. They expect you to perform your suffering publicly. so they can measure it, judge it, consume it. Strong people deny them that spectacle. They go quiet, not out of weakness, out of strategy. Silence after betrayal is the most unsettling response possible. It communicates something that words never could, that the betrayal did not define you, did not break your center, did not earn the power it was reaching for. Your silence says more than any speech. It says, I am still here, and I am not diminished. The sixth thing strong people do is redirect their pain into creation. Machiavelli did not write The Prince despite his suffering. He wrote it because of his suffering. The betrayal gave him something that comfort never could: clarity. When everything is taken from you, you finally see what was always yours: your mind, your capacity to understand, your ability to transform raw experience into something that outlives the pain that created it. Every great work of philosophy, every enduring piece of art, every revolution in human thought was born from someone who refused to let their suffering be the final word. If this reframe has shifted something in you, if you recognize yourself in this pattern of pain becoming purpose, a like puts this in front of someone who is sitting in the wreckage right now and needs to hear that the wreckage is not the end. The seventh thing strong people do, and this is the one Machiavelli embodied more than any other, is they refuse to let betrayal rewrite their nature. After everything that was done to him, Machiavelli did not become cruel. He did not become paranoid. He became precise. He became wiser without becoming bitter. He became guarded without becoming closed. This is the hardest thing of all, because betrayal whispers to you, change who you are, become harder, become colder, stop caring. And there is a seductive logic to that voice. If caring is what got you hurt, then the obvious solution is to stop caring. But that is not strength. That is surrender. You are handing the betrayer the final victory, the power to reshape your character. Strong people refuse that trade. They say, you took my trust, but you will not take my capacity to trust. You wounded me, but you will not decide who I become. So, what do you actually do with all of this? How does this translate from philosophy into your daily life? The first practice is what I call the interest audit. Once a week, sit with a single relationship, any relationship that matters to you, and ask yourself honestly, what does this person gain by being loyal to me? Not emotionally, structurally. What is the actual cost they would pay for betraying me? And what would they gain? This is not paranoia. This is the same analysis Machiavelli performed on every political alliance he ever studied. You are not looking for reasons to distrust. You are looking for the structural reality of the bond. If the answer is, they would lose nothing by leaving and gain something by turning, that is not a relationship to abandon. It is a relationship to stop over-investing in. Adjust your exposure accordingly. The second practice is the grief ledger. After a betrayal, or even in the middle of processing one that happened years ago, write 2 lists. The first list is everything you lost because of what they did: the relationship, the trust, the time, the version of reality you believed in. Let yourself name every loss without minimizing it. The second list is everything you gained, not in a toxic positivity way, not everything happens for a reason, but genuinely, what did the betrayal force you to develop that you would never have built otherwise? What strength did you discover only because the safety net was ripped away? Machiavelli lost his career, his reputation, and his freedom. He gained the perspective that produced one of the most influential books in history. Your gains will be different, but they exist, and naming them does not erase the pain. It gives the pain a direction. The third practice is the response delay. When betrayal is fresh, every instinct screams at you to act, to confront, to explain, to punish, to beg for answers. Do none of these things for 72 hours, not because your feelings are wrong, because your clarity has not arrived yet. The version of you that responds in the first 3 days is the version that is still inside the blast radius. That version will say things that feel righteous in the moment and devastating in the aftermath. Machiavelli waited years before responding to his betrayal. And when he did, it was with the most measured, strategic, and enduring response imaginable. You do not need to wait years, but you do need to wait long enough for the smoke to clear. 72 hours. That is the minimum distance between the wound and the response. In that gap, your power returns. The tension you felt at the beginning of this video, that recognition of a wound that never fully closed, it was never a sign that you were broken. It was a signal that you were ready to understand what happened to you clearly enough to stop carrying it as shame. Machiavelli spent the last years of his life in a farmhouse outside the city that had rejected him. Every evening he would change out of his muddy work clothes, put on the robes of a diplomat, and sit down to read and write by candlelight. He called it entering the courts of ancient men. He refused to let exile make him small. He refused to let betrayal strip him of his dignity. He sat down every night and reminded himself who he was, not who the world had decided he was. That is the final lesson. Betrayal does not get to define you. It does not get the last word. The people who turned on you were reacting to their own fears, their own interests, their own limitations. Their choice was about them. What you do next, that is about you. You are still here. You are still standing. And the fact that you watched this far tells me something that matters. You are not looking for comfort. You are looking for clarity. And clarity is what the strong are made of. If you want to keep going, subscribe. What we do here is not motivation. It is the kind of strategic, psychological clarity that Machiavelli himself would have recognized. The work of seeing the world as it actually is, not as you wish it were. The next video continues this thread. We go deeper into the mechanics of power, trust, and self-mastery every single time. And each one is built to leave you sharper than you were before you pressed play. If that is the kind of thinking you want in your life, this is where it lives. You were never naive for trusting. You were just reading the wrong map. Now you have a better one. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one. He sat down every night with the minds of Livy, Tacitus, Cicero, not to escape reality, but to sharpen himself against it. This was not leisure reading. This was deliberate reconstruction of the self. Machiavelli turned his study into a workshop where humiliation became insight. He created something lasting from the wreckage. The Prince was not written in triumph. It was written in exile, in poverty, in the aftermath of total political collapse. That is the final lesson. You do not need permission to rebuild. You do not need closure to continue. You do not need an apology or acknowledgement or justice before you begin again. You need only the refusal to become what was done to you. The work itself is the answer to betrayal. The fourth and final practice is the dignity ritual. Once a day, do one thing that has nothing to do with the person who hurt you. Write, train, build, create, read something difficult, solve a problem, make progress on a goal that predates the betrayal. Something that reminds you that your life is not a response to their actions. It is a structure you are building with or without their presence. This is how you reclaim authorship, not by winning them back, not by proving anything to them, but by proving that the story continues without them. Your attention is the most valuable thing you possess. When you give it to your own reconstruction, you take back the one thing betrayal tries to steal: your sense of agency. Machiavelli understood what most people refuse to accept. Betrayal is not an interruption of your life. It is information. It is the moment when reality breaks through your assumptions and shows you exactly where you stand. It reveals who was performing loyalty and who was living it. The strong do not waste that information on revenge or self-pity. They take it. They study it. They learn the architecture of loyalty and disloyalty. They rebuild with eyes open. And they never, ever give another person the power to author their ending. This is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming clear. Clear about what trust costs. Clear about who earns it. Clear about the difference between hope and evidence. If this resonated with you, subscribe now. We build these every week. Historical wisdom turned into psychological strategy. Real tools pulled from the hardest moments in history and made useful for the hardest moments in your life. This is not motivation. This is architecture. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 4 practices will you start with: the isolation fast, the language shift, the reconstruction project, or the dignity ritual. Let me know. I read every single one. Your answer helps shape what we cover next.